I'm Mike Dukart, creator of Illusion Game Call Systems. And as a former outfitter, it was hard for me to go to the store and buy a call that would work as effective in the field as I needed it to. So for the past 12 years, I've been designing and engineering products that would work with a much wider range of tone and volume. Now, each one of these systems is packaged with a CD-ROM that plays video on your computer, and it has an audio track for a CD player. And these CDs teach you what the language of the animal is so that you can be more effective in the field. The Illusion Short Reed Goose Call was designed unlike any other short reed on the market today. We've built the back pressure in the call already, so it doesn't take any hand manipulation to make the call break over from note number 1 to note number 2. Let me give you an example. Just build the pressure up on the call, snap it over to the note, no hand manipulation needed. So that makes it real easy to use. So in this instruction, what I'm going to do is I'm going to teach you how to hold and use your call. I'm going to teach you what the language is of the Canada goose, what that language means so you can be more effective in the field. So let's just get started with holding the call. Put it between your thumb and your index finger, and I like to put right up against the mouthpiece there. Now the reason for that is because when you roll your hand over, you don't want to choke over, you don't need to choke over the end of the call very much. So I just roll one little pinky over the end of it, and with my second hand, I call the baffle hand, you put a deep cup in there. Now it's real important that you don't cover the call with this hand or it won't work properly for you. You'll have a tough time controlling it. You need to keep this hand into a deep cup position like you're holding water, and keep the fingertips on the outside edge of this hand. Don't put them on top of your fingers. Keep them out here. Now you can adjust it left and right, whatever's comfortable for you, but keep that deep cup and don't cover the end of the call or you're going to have a tough time making it work. So with that being said, to place it on your mouth, I just rest it on my bottom lip, and my top lip comes about halfway down the end of the mouthpiece. A real comfortable position, just like I'm trying to take a sip of pop. So here we go, like that. So that's how you hold the call and place it in your mouth. Now we're ready to put some air pressure into it. Here's really important that you remember this. You want to breathe into your call. It's like you're saying who or ha or he. Okay, it's got to be that way. It can't come from your mouth. You can't blow, you can't puff air, you don't use your cheeks, you don't manipulate it with your mouth or your tongue. It's all breathing, and that's the key to making a short reed work. Put the air in there correctly or it won't work correctly. So let's try it out here. We'll just breathe into the call. And you'll notice that you get that steady air pressure going through, you get that first note, that first sound, and you keep a steady pressure through the call. Okay, now what I'm going to do now is build that pressure up. And what will happen is you'll hear some distortion start. Okay, that means the call is ready to snap into note number 2. So let's do that. Let's build the pressure up, steady pressure, don't let up at all, and snap off into the second note. Now it's really important that you don't back off on your air pressure, that you go all the way through with the pressure and snap into the next note by going he or hit or hut. So it's hoot, hoot, and you snap it over. Let's try it. Now if you're struggling a little bit, back your pressure off, build it up, and feel the crack or the snap over the note. If you still can't get it, move away your baffle hand. Okay? It'll be easier to do. You'll be able to put the pressure on there easier and snap it, and you'll feel that snap better. Let's try it this way. Now you know if you're snapping it over good that way how important it is not to cover that front of that call, because it'll keep it from working properly. What that's designed to do is it's designed to just move the notes left and right and then just kind of variate the tone a little bit, and we'll get into that a little bit more. But that's how easy it is to use this call. The honk. The honk is probably the most recognized verbiage of the Canada goose. And it's just a simple note. You go from the beginning note, the first note, number 1, and you snap off into that second note of the Canada goose. What I like to do is build the pressure up on the reed, open up a little bit and crack it off good. Now I don't use the honk a lot. If I do, it's a short version with a good snap. Let's try a couple versions now. That's kind of an elongated honk. I like to shorten them up when I use it in the field. Okay, that's a little more aggressive. And you'll notice that I'm moving my hand open when so I get good pressure built up on that reed, build up the pressure and snap off a good crack on that honk. And that's the way I'll use it when I'm out in the field. Like I said, it's more of a greeting thing that you kind of throw in there, and that's our first piece of the language. Let's talk about feeder grunts. Now, feeder grunts are a real simple thing to do. It's just a matter of doing them properly to get the best sound out of it. What you want to do is just grunt into the call. It's a little challenging with a short reed, but yet it's real easy with a short reed to do because it takes a lot less air pressure. So what you want to do is it's just like you're clearing your throat, and I just kind of do a and then add a little bit of D sound into it with my tongue. So I'm going do, 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 do. Now the deeper and the real more coarseness that you can grunt, the better the actual feeder grunts will sound. So really this is nothing more than an extension of your own voice trying to sound like a goose through this call. So the first thing you want to remember on grunting now is to choke off the call a lot. So I'm going to roll my pinky down nice and tight on here. I'm going to take my baffle hand and I'm actually going to seal off the end of the call a little bit more here. I'm not having any air come through except for right in this little opening where the thumb and the index finger come together. So I've actually rotated my hand off to the side more, sealed off the entire call, the entire end of the hand here, and just left a little hole. So now all I'm going to do is just go do, do, do into my call, and let's see what it sounds like. You get that growly sound. Do, do, do. Now, you don't want to put too much air pressure in here. You want to put a lot of coarseness into it. So just lighten up the air pressure, make it really coarse, choke it off good. We'll do it again. If you put too much air into it, it might snap over into note, which is no big deal. Let's get into the clucks. Now the short reed was designed to be probably one of the better clucking type calls out there. And that really is the strength of a short reed, and the one thing that a lot of people use it for in your professional guides. You can get a lot of noises, a lot of sounds, sound like a ton of geese. So clucking, you can get a lot of clucks out of the call with one breath of air, and that's the big advantage of a short reed call. Now a cluck is nothing more than a honk, but it's shortened up. And all you do is go right to the breakover note and you just snap it. So you just, rather than build the pressure up and go bloop, you just go bloop, 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 and you just shorten everything way up and you hit the note a lot like this. Now what I did there is I added a little bit of grunting to my clucks. Okay, so the grunting sound made it a little bit more goosey sound. You don't need to do that. You can just go and go toot, 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 toot. So I'm bringing the air pressure from my chest and my diaphragm, but I'm actually going ooh, ooh, almost coughing into the call. And then I control the air with my tongue. I shut that note off right away. So I'm going hoot, hoot, almost hoot, 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 little cough. I'm going to open it up a little bit. A little bit higher pitch, isn't it? And we can go even harder with the cluck and get a little higher pitch yet. I'm going hit, 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 hit. A little bit sharper and a little bit harder. So let's go with the three notes. I just slowly just open, 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 harder, 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 three pitches. So now we got another exercise, okay? We have 3 variations of pitch with the cluck, and now we're gonna learn how to do multiple clucks with one breath, okay? So take about a halfway full breath of air and see how many clucks you can do in one pitch. So it's all about air control and getting a number of clucks in one breath of air. So now what we'll do is we'll do the same thing, only we'll change pitches, okay? So it'll be okay, now we know how to do the different variations of sound of clucking, and we're going to get into the actual language of the clucks. The first one we're going to cover is double clucks. It's a competitive thing that geese will do. They'll go back and forth, and it's kind of an aggressive thing where they're competing for food or whatever the case might be. And you want to get the lowest cluck you can get, and then you want to snap it off into a nice high cluck. So it's kind of a bloop, blip, bloop, blip, bloop, blip. And then it just becomes more emotion and more flow. So let's try this. We're going to do the 2 pitches, and then we'll kind of throw a little bit of rhythm into it and think of being a goose and sounding like a goose and a couple of geese competing on the ground. It goes like this. And that's the sound you're looking for. So now we give it a little bit of emotion, like geese are competing. Now there's some other variations of the double cluck. It's basically kind of a rhythm thing that you can do, and it's like plup, 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 plup. And let's do that. Rather than kind of roll them together like I did before, it'll be more of a separate cluck going back and forth. Let's do that. So it's kind of a rapid cluck back and forth. But I like to make it sound more goosey and a little bit more natural. What I'll do is I'll throw a little bit more grunting into it, and I'll give it a nice low as I can get and a nice high, and I'll just throw some emotion into it based on how the geese react. A little bit more like this. Let's talk about the hutta cluck. Now the hutta cluck is a very challenging thing to do on the call. And really what it is, once again, it's an extension of your voice, and I'm using my throat a lot along with my tongue. So I'm just going hit, t, hit, t. So I'm snapping over a cluck, and I'm just adding a little t at the end. And it sounds like this. I'm just going t. I'm not breaking the note over, I'm just going hit, snapping it over, and t at the end of the break. Snap a note, add a little t. Now let's do a few in a row. So I'm going to do what I did again, and then I'm going to bring it up to a really, really quick pace. And basically, you can't even tell the difference between the notes. It's just tick-a-tick-a-tick-a-tick-a-tick. So it's as quick as you can get it, almost like a duck chuckle, if you will. So let me show you again. So I'm just going to, it's coming from my throat, and it's coming from my tongue, and I'm just shooting that back and forth. Now when geese are getting ready to fly, you know, a lot of times I'll just blah, 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 blah. So I'll put it in with a lot of flock clucking if I'm trying to create the illusion of masses of geese getting excited. Now let's talk about flock clucks. Okay, the flock clucking is nothing more than a mix of all the different styles of clucks and everything mixed together and trying to sound like an entire flock of Canada geese. So what you want to do is keep a nice base of clucking going, and then you can raise it up with some hutta clucks into an excited blah, 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 or you can just do it real subtle with some grunt and clean clucks in there. And as you pick things up, maybe you throw in a few double clucks or something like that. And let's just go through a scenario how that might sound. Okay, so we'll start out with something real subtle. Once again, geese approaching, say something to me. I'm going to do some light grunt clucks and clean clucks as a greeting. Now you'll notice that I'm deflecting the sound into all different areas of the group of decoys. You want to sound like a goose, here, 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 here. So you're sounding like that group. If you blow the call and the note right at the goose, they can pinpoint where that sound's coming from. In a lot of cases, that's how people get busted. They look exactly where the sound's coming from, they see red hands and faces and movement, and they pick you out. Or it's too loud, it's too aggressive, and you blow them right out of the decoy spread. And that's real common for it to happen. So you want to act like you're the geese on the ground and sound like a flock. So let's say that things are getting more excited and the geese are coming around, and I'm going to sound like more geese getting excited. They got excited in the air, so I'm going to get excited on the ground. I'll pick it up, throw some double clucks in there for you. Now you notice I picked up the speed and it got a little bit, and I went bloop, 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 bloop. It's a cluck bass, a little double cluck, you can throw some of them in there, and some grunt clucks and clean clucks, and that's a good scenario to use when you got birds excited. You're bringing up the excitement of a group at that point. Now let's talk about the groans and the bawls. There's nothing more than really grunting into the call and changing the note out a little bit by opening your throat and opening your choking finger underneath a little bit. And it sounds a lot like this, just elongate it out. So I'm grunting in real heavy at the beginning, and then I just kind of back off on the grunt and clean it up and just kind of So at the end of the note, I'm not grunting at all, I'm not growling, I'm just kind of, and I just clean it up and just kind of lengthen it out. Open up the choke finger a little bit and it'll bring up the pitch. It's kind of nice to add that sound in with some of the different variations of clucks and whatnot. Now let's talk about a fly down call. And this is something you'll hear geese do as they're floating over, and they kind of do this little riddle, riddle, riddle. It's a noise that I like to use in the field when I have flying decoys out. It's a noise I like to use when geese are working me and like they're making their first pass through and they make a circle. And right when they're trying to figure out what they want to do, not coming at me, but off to the side and maybe even going away a little bit, what I'll do is I'll hit a few fly down calls in there with the clucks, kind of a to simulate that there's geese flying down into the spread. A lot of times that's really, really effective. And it sounds like this. You're actually breaking over a note into the second note, kind of a cluck, and then you just back right off and open up like we did with our groan call. It's kind of a riddle, riddle, snap over and back. Riddle. Back to that note number one, like this. So I grunt the cluck through, then I just back off and kind of blow a nice moan in there. And I open that up. Okay? Now you can do it with different types of emotion. Younger geese excited coming in might do it a little bit quicker, a little bit higher pitch. And they'll have, you know, more of a urgency to it, or it might be an older one coming in or a lazy one just kind of riddle. So just see how the geese react to it. Throw some fly downs in there and see how the geese react when they're off to the side, or if you got some flying decoys out there, it might surprise you how well they commit into your spread doing that. Now the plea call is a really emotional plea or scream, if you will, from geese, and I like to throw it in there when I got birds that are real active. They're calling a lot, they're excited, and I got a lot of rapid clucking going in. Sometimes I'll just throw some pleas in, kind of a blee, 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 kind of an elongated sound. And let's do it on the call here and see what it sounds like. Once again, you'll snap off into that higher note and you'll just kind of run that note out like this. So I'm starting out and I'm getting that low note, ba-lee, almost like kind of a honk, ha-loop. Instead of doing a honk, you do a ha-lee. You extend that note out, you're pleating to them. So if there's birds flying around, it's real exciting. What I'm going to do is I'm going to do a lot of rapid clucks, and then I'll do that plea in there sometimes. Let's talk about the comeback call. Now this is a call that I use a lot in the early season. A lot of times you'll get your juveniles, you can actually shoot into flocks, and you can do a comeback call right as they split up after you shoot, and they're all in different areas and go in different directions. They'll try to assemble back together, and right before they assemble back is when I start hitting that comeback call. A lot of times you'll turn one bird to come back in. It's typically a juvenile or something that wants to know what's going on, or you tell them to come back, and then the rest of the flock will assemble around that bird, and you can bring the entire flock right back in again. We do it fairly consistently in the earlier parts of the season, some of your nuisance goose hunts and so on. Anyway, the comeback is kind of a blip, blip, kind of a come back, and I'll do it on the call. So you do a quick cluck, and then you just do a scream or a plea at the end of it. So I'm doing 2 clucks, pluck, pluck, and then the last one's really long. So I got a high cluck, I choke down and do a nice long note after that. It's like this. That's your comeback call. Now the way you'll use that is you'll be calling in and stuff like that, and let's just say that the birds flare or whatever the case might be, and you have some juveniles. Maybe you just want to try a comeback because they're not coming in all the way and it looks like they're going to kind of ease off and go away. So you'll do your clucking and then you just throw some comebacks in. I'll show you what that sounds like with some clucks. And I'll usually do it 2 times. Once in a while I'll throw in 3, sometimes I'll do 1, and when I do that, I'm looking at the birds and I'm trying to figure out which one reacted to that. Now, if a single bird reacted to that, that's the one I'm going to work. And this is the kind of call where you can blow it right at that particular bird, because they're kind of going away, or they're in a situation where they're not coming in strong. So you're clucking, and all of a sudden you do a few comebacks. Do the comebacks, watch that bird. Oh, that one reacted. You're doing some more clucking. Boom, he's still not sure he's hanging there. Hit him with another one, come back. You know, he might come in a little bit more. And that's actually how you work the birds. Let's talk about tuning and cleaning your call. Now, there's a couple rules you want to follow. One is if the call's working good, there's no sense in taking it apart. And the other rule is if you don't have it down to where you're getting good clean snaps and cracks on your notes and you don't have good control over it, you don't want to take it apart because you can't test it to make sure that it's working properly. So with that being said, if you need to replace the reed or clean it up, the first thing you're going to want to do is just take and twist off the mouthpiece here. And that's going to expose the gut pieces. Now the gut pieces consist of a wedge, a reed, and a tone board. Now I take a pair of pliers when I remove these 3 pieces, but I make sure that I'm putting some padding on them. I cover the teeth up good, or you can use a piece of cloth to go around the call so you're not marring up these plastic parts. So the first thing you'll do is you'll grab onto those call pieces, slide it all the way up to the call itself, and hold them tight, and all you do is twist the barrel of the call off. So the call gets twisted off, you have your gut pieces, and then you can take your gut pieces and you can clean them, you can take it apart, your wedge, your reed, and your tone board. Now you'll notice on the tone board we have what I like to call tuning tabs on the back of it. So the first thing is you get everything cleaned up, you put your reed back, clean it up, and make sure the reed doesn't have any delamination to it, or there's not any damage and it's in good shape. Before you put it back, it's all clean. And when you place it back on top of the tone board, what you want to remember is if there's any natural curve to the reed at all, is you're going to want to make sure that that curve is upward off of the tone board, okay? So we'll slide the reed on there back to these tuning tabs, okay? Get them lined up there, curve going up if there's any curve at all. Then we'll take our wedge and we'll slide the thin end of the wedge down to the tuning tabs. And you'll notice that that's all lined up, okay? Now I put a scribe line on my call all the way around it before I take it apart, and that's a good idea. Make sure there's a scribe line there. You just take a pen or a pencil, go all the way around and trace it right at the base of where it goes into the call. So now you know how to compress it back into the exact spot. And that's very important when it comes to getting the right sounds that you're looking for, and that's really where you're going to make your adjustments on your sound as far as how your call is going to sound. So I got my scribe line already done, I got my call cleaned up, I got the parts together, I'm ready to put the whole thing back together. So what I'm going to do is take these parts, keep them in the exact position, and we're going to insert them back into the call, okay? Now once they're inserted back into the call, I just use, you could make a little tool or whatever works for you, but I just use the mouthpiece, the small end, and I slide it over the tone board and the reed without damaging it, and I kind of lean it downward a little bit, and I'm actually putting pressure on the wedge itself. Now I just compress that in, and I got my scribe line, and you'll notice that the scribe line that I have, that's where I marked it. It's right around where the edge of the call is and the guts are together. That's how I marked that with a pencil. So it's right where I want it. If I want a little higher pitch, I would make it a touch tighter. If it's a little bit too high pitch for me and breaking too easy, I might leave it just a touch looser. And when I mean a touch, I don't mean much. So you can adjust it and play around with it, make sure everything's in the right position. This is set for exactly how I like it. So I'm going to put the top on. Got my nice goosey sounds and a good crack on that snap. We're good to go. Fusion has a lot of different game call systems out there. Go to our website, take a peek at all of it. It's sure to help you out in the field.